you?
I'm keeping a low profile.
I guess. Well, it's 9:01 according to my computer, so I'll start the meeting. As everyone knows, with the emails that Eric sent out, we have Bruce McCaskill from Home Compliance is going to be making a presentation to us again today. He spoke to us, according to my notes, back in February. And then after that, we're going to cover parking, address that. Eric sent out the information. Other people have commented on it. So I'll turn it over to Eric since he's the one that lined Bruce up, and he can, make the introduction to them.
Hi, I see Jim has joined us. You don't happen to be with Host Compliance, are you?
Oh, this is Bruce. I don't know why it came up Jim. This is Bruce. Hi.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Bruce.
Absolutely.
Give me 1 second here.
Sure.
So we wanted to bring you back here to continue our conversation about host compliance and how it might fit with the town of Canandaigua's goals. Obviously, we talked quite a bit back in February.
Right.
So maybe you can give us an update anyways. At least, how has COVID impacted you guys and how do you
Sure.
foresee it impacting you moving forward? And then we'll kind of get into town-specific items.
No, sure. So for us, we're up to about 400 cities, towns, and counties throughout the U.S. that we work with. From a COVID perspective, across our customers, we only saw a 3% drop from March through May, and then we saw a 12% increase in June. I actually pulled your numbers this morning, like literally an hour ago, so I can tell you the updated numbers if you like, what you had compared to what you had back in February.
Can I ask just real quickly, the 3% drop, is that the number of listings or is that like the number of
rental units? Right, correct. The number of actual rental units, so the actual physical dwellings that were online.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Let me go ahead and pull that up really quick. I'll tell you what. You want me to share my screen really quick? Would that make sense so you can see it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm not sure what is the share.
Well, I can do it. I'm used to. I can just hit share my screen and be able to pull it up really quick. So sure. You have to. Okay. So let me go ahead and pull this up. So can everybody see my screen okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So I did this actually literally an hour ago. And this is going to kind of show the breakdown. So let you know, so HomeAway and VRBO have actually combined, and they're just going to be HomeAway from now on. So Expedia owned both the companies, and for their perspective, it made more sense just to have kind of one platform. So they've kind of combined into one platform. And so let me roll down here so you can see the actual numbers. So this would be the numbers down here, the 93 and 73. So you can kind of see the difference. So the number of rental units as of February was 69. As of this morning, it was 73. So not a big jump. It went up about 4 rental units or 4 dwellings that are live as of this morning on the vacation rental platforms. You can see here's kind of the map with kind of the breakdown. Right. So, there's 2 factors, right? So first, it is summertime. So obviously, it's a busy time, especially, being by the lake. But, also back in February, there was kind of the wintertime scenario. And, obviously with COVID and restrictions, we did see, like I said, about a 3% drop as an average. So not every, some places had larger drops depending on the locations, but we did see about an average 3% drop. But the numbers have increased, since February. So currently 73 online. And then 93 listings. And the actual listing, number 93, represents the actual advertised sites. So hosts sometimes will, have their house on multiple sites. So they may have it on Airbnb and HomeAway at the same time. So that's where you see that little bit, that number difference in the number of listings versus the dwellings, the house itself. Is there any questions? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'll take a snapshot of this, Eric, and send it to you so that everybody can I'll put it in inside of a PowerPoint so you can actually see the map and the breakdown.
Yeah,
That would help.
You know, with regard to what's
Perfect.
going on here. Members,
Can I throw out a question here?
Absolutely.
When we talk about rental units,
Mhm.
does your site track an occupancy rate? In
We
other
do.
words,
Mhm.
I tried to work backwards from your numbers that you gave us back in February and try and come up with, take the number of rental units times your average nightly rate. But I didn't have anything for an occupancy level to figure out what the gross revenue in the town might be and what sales tax we might be missing on and so
Sure.
on.
No, we do. So within inside of our software, we're able to tell you the occupancy levels per room, per house. So if you have, for example, certain restrictions on the number of people that you want per room or per house, whether it's, from parking issues or for sewer requirements, we can give you that information on each individual rental unit. So you'll know the occupancy levels.
Is there an overall guesstimate on occupancy level on an annual basis?
Let me do a little bit of research and just see. I'll try to get you some estimated revenue numbers based on the average nightly rate for a 12-month period. I'll look into the occupancy levels and see if we've done a run on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bruce, back in February, according to my notes, you said 90% of the homes or the rentals were single-family homes. Does that still hold true roughly?
That does correct.
Is your, I don't see anything on here like the private rental places like Premier Properties. Did you check with those as well? I know some of them do not list on these Airbnb.
Right. No, so they would have to be on the platforms that we scan. So we scan about 65 platforms now. So everything from Airbnb down to Craigslist. But just typically what we see, or at least what I see a lot, is if it's a local rental company, realty company, they're typically to drive out of town people locally. They typically take that listing and put it on one of the sites.
I don't think that's necessarily true for some of our higher end properties on the lake.
Yeah, well, if it's not on one of the platforms that we scanned, then we would not pick that up.
How many new communities have you signed up over the last 3 or 4 months during this COVID pandemic?
Probably close to 60, probably. I can check for you locally in New York. Myself, I've had, in the last month, I have had 4 areas in New Jersey. So Bradley Beach, Jersey City. I'll check on New York. That's we have, another person who works in New York as well as my counterpart. I'll check and see from New York who's signed up in the last 30 days.
What percentage of the available rental units generally sign up for during the registration period?
So the average for us using our software is 68% the first year, and then in the upper 80 percentile the second year. That's the average kind of across the board for us. And the time frame is usually within 60 days of that 68% within that first 60 days. Did I answer your question, John?
You did.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing I noticed is on the summary that you sent, you noted a registration fee of between $400 and $500. Was that a number that you gave us based on what you're seeing as an average, or is that a number that we dictated?
So typically for us, a best practice is what most cities and towns do is they look at their average nightly rate and they multiply that by 1.5 to 2 times. That's kind of a typical way that most cities and towns come up with their registration rate. And the reason being is, 1 to 2 nights per year is a fair registration rate for a host. You're only talking about charging them for 1 to 2 night rentals per that period.
So it's $550 roughly.
So Bruce, the people that you sign up are people that are renting it for the season. They aren't renting it for like a week for the year to help offset some of their taxes.
No, they are. So it depends on the definition of a short-term rental. Most cities, towns, and counties, their definition of a short-term rental, probably 95% or 30 days or less. So if a renter rents for 3 weeks, continuous 3 weeks, that's considered still, most cities, towns, and counties consider that a short-term rental. And then typically anything over 30 days falls more into the realm of a long-term rental. So our software is based on your ordinance and customized based on your ordinance. That's how we pull this data and give you that information. Did that answer your question, Tom? Sorry. Or Gary, I'm sorry. Trying to look through.
Yes,
Gary.
it did. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
You all have other questions? Are there, I guess for the rest of the committee, are there issues, concerns that we want to address still?
I have some concerns I want to address, but I think that we ought to do that in private.
Maybe a question would be, what other New York State municipalities that you represent have a local guest tax and in addition to sales tax? Any idea there?
I'd have to research that, Tom. I'll send you, when I send this deck over to Eric, I'll send you that information, including the deck.
Okay.
I'll send you the list of all the municipalities that we're working with in New York, and then I'll look through and see who's charging a guest tax based on their jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other questions that I can address?
One other on
Go ahead.
taxes. Who do you guys actually collect the sales tax for the municipalities?
We absolutely can. We can actually go through and do an audit to get the real revenue and the number of nights, and then we can actually collect it as well.
Okay. I guess a question for Eric or Doug. At this point, do we, the municipality, the town, the county, get any tax revenue from short-term rentals presently?
I don't think we do, right?
I don't think we do either.
No.
I mean, we're talking about at least $3 million of revenue at a 30% occupancy rate. That's
Yeah, I'm not sure that we do. Doug, did you hear that question? Do we collect any revenue
Helen.
from?
Yeah, I caught the tail end of it, but I think it was about us getting revenue for these rentals, and no, we do not. We share in sales tax, the sales tax formula with the county, but we do not get anything for short-term rentals at all.
okay. Who gets this? Who collects and monitors the sales tax?
So right now, it's essentially, it's almost set up as voluntary. The county, and Kathy, I think, is on the line, but the county passed legislation requesting special state legislation so that the county could collect it. But from my conversation with the county treasurer, what he said is that that'll be going to the county, and there's no immediate plan for that even to be shared with the local municipalities. So I don't know how that'll go, but currently there really isn't anything. For instance, the city of Canandaigua and city of Geneva each have an occupancy tax, and so they're collecting directly. but there's nothing else right now.
And it'd be very spotty enforcement, if any.
Correct.
Yeah, so this is a lost opportunity.
Is there anything else for Bruce then? Well, he's joined us. Could you go over one more time, Bruce? I'm sorry, the like the fees for the town for the service of host compliance?
Sure,
And what
sure.
would be-
Let me, I'm actually going to bring it up what we previously had, so it makes sense.
Now, this is something you're gonna send Bruce to
Absolutely,
Eric?
I'll send it over to you. Absolutely.
Okay.
You guys show my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen okay? Okay.
Yep.
So we have 5 different modules and they're all broken down. So I'll say first off that we don't require you buy our whole platform. It's basically a la carte. So you can add as you need. So you mentioned, you know, the tax, if you don't have a TOT tax or Logi tax now, that's something you add down the road. You can just add the rental activity monitoring, which is the module specifically for that when you need it. So we try to make it really simple. It's based on the number of listings that you have. So it's on an annual basis. So for example, address identification is $45 per listing per year. Compliance monitoring is where we send the letters out for you. We get them compliant. We go through that whole process. Rental activity monitoring is our tax recovery and our audit. And then we have a hotline as well. So I'll show you so it makes sense right over here. So this would be the, yes.
Unique listings?
I'm sorry?
Is that unique listings or total listings?
Oh, so for address identification, which is the core module, so that's where we go out and identify the addresses. That's going to be based on the number of actual advertised listings. And once we've identified that, like I said, you know, I think you only have right now 4 or 5 rental units that are on multiple sites. Once we've identified those listings, everything else is based on that actual rental unit itself.
Okay.
So we have to go through that process of identifying, and if they're on a different site, you know, we still go through the same process identifying. But once we've identified that listing, we know, hey, they're on multiple sites, that rental unit. Everything else is just charged by rental unit. So that's the only thing that's charged by listing is address identification. And I'll resend this to you, but this is kind of the annual breakdown of price. So for example, address identification would be $45.90 per year. And we lock this in for 12 months. So there's no upfront fees. There's no maintenance fees or any type of other charges. That's all inclusive. And it is a 12-month service agreement. So we would lock those numbers in. So for example, if your rentals go up in August, you know, from let's say 93 to 110 or 150, it doesn't make a difference. We're not going to charge you for those additional rental units or listings throughout the year. We just lock that in. So we'll still go through the same process of identifying them, sending out the letters, collecting the tax, whatever the process may be, based on that number when we go into an agreement, and we just lock that in. So we know rental units change all the time. They kind of go up and down, but you know, there's no way for us to bill it monthly. So we just lock it in, and it's for, you know, for an annual basis. Does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody have any questions on that?
Nope, that's
Nope.
good.
Okay, and I'll send this over to everybody. So I know it's a little hard to see online, but I'll send you this full deck again with the new numbers as well.
And the fees, Bruce, are due at the beginning, the middle, or the end from the
It's due
town?
at the beginning. It's due at the beginning. So it'd be a annual contract for 12 months. And then when the renewal comes the following year, what we do is we look at a 10-month rolling average for the second year. And just to be upfront, typically your numbers will go down because once you start enforcing short-term rentals, there's going to be a certain amount of rentals that we say churn off, or people who are not going to pay their registration fees. And typically you'll see kind of a downswing within that first year. Does that make sense, Gary?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else I can address while you have me here on the phone?
No?
No?
No.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. Like I said, I'll get this information over to Eric. And if there's any other questions, feel free, just give me a call or shoot me an email and I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for your
you.
time.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thanks.
You too.
Okay.
Now he's gone, Eric?
He's gone.
Okay. Okay, I think it was you, John, and probably some others said that they would like to discuss things after he was gone. I'll open it to that now.
Well, technically, our meetings are public, so we'd have to go into some sort of executive session, talk in private.
Really?
Yeah.
We have
Can't
to
we
go to,
just-
If you're
We can
saying you
just-
want to say something in private, you can't exclude the public from our meeting.
I don't care if it's in private. I just didn't think we ought to have Bruce on the line when we're talking.
I understand what you're saying, but, from a procedural standpoint, if I'm wrong, I'd be happy to be corrected.
Private only in the sense that you didn't want Bruce online at the same time, right, John?
That is all, yes.
I mean, it's an open conversation, that.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. It was, to be opened just among the committee members and people that attended.
I have a question that I could have asked if he was with us. What is our pitch to homeowners to register? In other words, we're asking them to spend money to register. What do we tell them that they're getting for this? What's the advantage for them? The obvious advantage to us is that we get some revenue. What is our pitch telling, what do we say to these people, telling them that what is the advantage for them to register?
So if I could just jump in there for a second, Gary. So there's a couple of things going on here. So we have had some situations around the town where the short-term rentals are taking place, and in less than, maybe not the safest conditions. For instance, let me give you a specific example. And this one is an older one now, but we had a situation where there was a log cabin on Weifels Road that was being rented out in short-term rentals, and the basement had been converted to, I think, 4 or 5 bedrooms, and it was being advertised as Sleeps 20. What we were able to do is actually go in and through a bunch of different series of things, we were able to work with the owner, although it took quite a long time because we had to issue court appearance tickets and everything else to get that resolved. Had there been at least a registration process where people are required to register, we could hopefully catch some of that stuff up front before you get into those types of situations. Now, you can make an argument that we were still able to address that. However, if somebody had gotten killed not being able to escape the basement, well, that's a whole different situation. And we do have examples of municipalities, even in the state of New York, being sued for that particular issue of not enforcing the Uniform Building Code specifically for short-term rentals. And that's where it gets very, very complicated. But some sort of a basic registration process would help us identify those units that are being used for short-term rentals up front. At least have some sort of registration. We know what's going on. Also, we get complaints about noise and trash and parties and everything else. And if, again, there's some sort of a registration process, then we at least have a main point of contact that we can go back to and say, hey, we're getting complaints about this, that, or the other thing, especially on a Saturday or a Sunday. And that's the difficult time for short-term rentals. People are renting for a long weekend. Code enforcement's getting called at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, whether it's directly to their cell phones or whether it's through the 911 system. They get called. I get called. And then it's, okay, who is it that we can contact? Who is it that we can say, hey, there's a problem at your short-term rental? I don't have anybody. So at least, again, if there's some sort of a registration process, we can at least communicate. So what is it that they're getting? You know, it's not so much, Bob. I don't know that they're getting a lot, unless somebody would say, yes, that they're getting the benefit of having, you know, maybe an inspection up front or some sort of understanding that what they're doing, that the town's aware of it, that sort of thing. But it's more for us. Let's be honest about it. It's the contact information for us. It's to make sure that from a liability standpoint that we've got contact information, we've got the registration, and then if there is a problem that we know who we need to contact and go in.
But maybe there's a possibility in their advertising, if they said they are registered, it would perhaps be a plus for them.
They could register, they could advertise, for instance, that they are registered with the town of Canandaigua, that sort of a thing. Right?
Okay. We should recognize that these property owners have become a business, and all businesses are regulated. I mean, I don't think we have to be apologetic about the registration process and the regulation. John, you had a comment?
I question how you arrived at your $3 million worth of revenue. My numbers are significantly different than yours.
Okay, I took $364 nightly rate times what was the times 73 rental units times 110 days. That's a 30% occupancy rate, and it came out to about $2.9 million.
So you're renting it for the entire year. And
Yeah, that's why I used a real low occupancy rate.
Well, I think that is not reflective of what people are experiencing here on the lake. But I guess, you know, that would only be a concern if we start talking about whether we're going to go and tax people relative to this.
Yeah, maybe pure fantasy. I just picked a number out of my hat. What's the occupancy rate? I got no idea, and he apparently didn't either.
And it didn't sound like Bruce had that information either.
No.
No, and if I work the numbers and just say that we're doing basing it on the 12 weeks of summer, 12 weeks where it's the most likely to be rented, and I use 73 units and I use 30% occupancy, it basically equates to 25 nights per year that they're renting it. And I used a number of $300. We could use 364, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I put the rent received, the revenue received at $7,500 for 73 units, only comes to $550,000 worth of revenue. So there's significantly difference in numbers. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, the rent you receive is not that significant where people are making money doing this. Most of the time, people are just trying to offset some of the taxes that they have. And most of the properties, as was illustrated by the gentleman's map, are some of the higher end properties and the ones that pay the most taxes. So I think that the reality is people are just trying to offset some of their taxes. And I can tell you right across the street from my home is probably one of the more attractive rental properties on the lake. And he's lucky. I've only seen him so far this year, 1 week of rental that he's experienced. So I think it just illustrates my point that it's not like these people are making a lot of money doing this. I think they're just trying to offset some of their taxes.
Well, that's probably true. They probably are trying to
You froze, Terry.
offset taxes, but, you know, using this year as an example might not be representative.
Well, I can express it from 30 years of experience, Terry, being on the lake.
Well, the one across from you there, John, I mean, I've driven by it many times in previous years, and they're there could be quite a few cars parked out in front, you know, so I mean, the whole thing is, it's not like, selling bread. I mean, it's, you know, most people buy bread, but, renting these out, there's so many other factors involved.
Yeah.
It's tough to make an accurate prediction of what a revenue stream might be, so.
Yep.
And I think it's also irrelevant what they do with the money, whether they pay their taxes with it or
Alright.
whether they give it to their grandkids.
Yeah,
It's revenue.
yeah. Well, our concern really is driven by, you know, the safety, the security, the protection for the town. I mean, that was the driving force in getting into this conversation originally. So, you know, that's our responsibility to make sure that, you know, what we have in our code is going to protect, you know, people's lives, people's property, people's, you know, security.
And the neighbor's property and the property
Yeah.
value.
Yeah.
I think when you guys asked the question about comparability or other municipalities that are in New York State that are doing the same thing, we really need that information, because whatever we do, it doesn't make good sense to reinvent the wheel if some other towns are on top of this.
I also think at the last meeting, we talked about canvassing other towns in New York that might be similar to ours that might have implemented this and see what kind of success they've had with it.
Yeah, I think specifically we were talking Seneca County, and I think someone was given the task to come up with some information as to how Seneca County is faring.
If I just could, so the New York State Department of State does training for a lot of boards, as a lot of you have been to over the years and everything. And obviously this year with COVID, everything has changed. But traditionally, what they've actually used is the town of Geneva has a short-term rental ordinance. And they use that as an example of the one to adopt. They use that at all of their trainings coming directly from the New York State Department of State. I think that's probably, in my opinion, it's completely up to the board, but I think that is probably even maybe a little bit more robust than what we want to do to start with. I would think like a simple registration type of a system for us to get started. And it's not really up to, with all due respect, it's up to the town board to figure out whatever fee they're going to charge. The town board sets the fee schedule, whether it's $50 for that registration or $400, the town board will decide that. What we need to figure out as far as the ordinance committee is what should be in the local law if we're going to go down this road. What is it that we should be looking at? And maybe we don't take the step of doing all the things that some of the other municipalities do with the occupancy tax and all that, but just the basic registration system to at least get us started so we have a better handle on, okay, how many of these short-term rentals are there? And so at least, like I said, we have that contact information. That's the one thing that I think would be very helpful for us, that contact information, so we know who to call when there's a problem, and also to make sure that they're not on our records, 4-bedroom, 3-bath house advertising sleeps 40, because then we know there's a problem. So if we have some of that basic information, you know, then we can go from there, and then we can figure out the rest down the road.
And Doug, I think that's where we were in February. I think we agreed that the registration would certainly be worthwhile. And then consideration of any revenue generation, that was something we'd look at in the future.
Looking at
I
the town of Geneva one, it looks very well written. I've looked at it before. I was just looking at it now while you guys were on. I don't know if people want to take a look at that. Easy enough to find just by Googling it.
There it is.
Does Geneva have somebody collect their tax revenue for them? Kathy? does-
I don't, I know you're talking to me. I don't know, but I can find out. I think so. I think they do, but I don't know.
Well, the one thing that I received letters on or comments on before we talked about it last time in February is some of the people naturally were concerned that they only rent it for a week out of the year, and they would be charged the same fees as somebody that rented it, you know, most of the summer. So I don't know if you're thinking about a sliding scale or what, based on the usage or what.
I guess that's where an occupancy tax
Oh,
would be
for-
more efficient. It
Somebody
hits the
that
people.
rents that infrequently, Gary, would probably not list it on VRBO or whatever. They probably rent to the same people every year, and it's just
They
word
do.
of mouth.
Yeah.
You know,
And
at
what
least that's been my
Some of them
experience.
did, yes.
But what we're talking about is a registration fee, not a occupancy tax. I mean, to get going with something like a registration fee should be the same across the board, whether it's somebody that rents for a week or 12 weeks. The fee, I mean, from our conversations earlier this year, that fee wasn't really all that substantial. So I would think that passing along a modest fee to, renters wouldn't be an issue. Getting a handle on exactly what's going on with these properties and making sure that we are doing all we can to ensure safety is a reasonable position for the town to take, I would think.
To Doug's
I
point,
agree
though,
with
the fee at the town board level for the ordinance committee, are we all kind of in agreement that everybody, or that we should worry more about kind of registration than a more robust local?
As I recall, the February meeting, we talked more about a revenue neutral as a possibility, but the registration was more important. That's the way I sort of remember the February meeting. Do you remember?
I agree with you. I agree with you, Bob.
I agree.
That's what the February meeting was.
Yeah.
So I think, whether the town contracts with host compliance will also be up to the town board. But if it is just a registration, does it make sense to go with host compliance, or is that something that would be done by the code enforcement officer?
I think if you look at the town of Geneva's law, it looks like something that code enforcement can do, and it does appear that their code enforcement enforces it. When you say robust law, I'm not really sure what you mean by that. It doesn't look like, it looks like just a registration type and complying with all of the requirements of their town code. I sent you guys a link to it. Seems well written. Again, when I'm from my standpoint, not looking for a revenue generator. We need to, at some point, to help offset the costs of code enforcement. That would be justification for raising the fee. But I'm just looking for, personally, a nominal fee to help offset the costs of that we would be able to anticipate at this point.
$200 a unit would cover the roughly 15 grand that this post compliance would cost us. So it's not big money.
That's if you went with the whole.
Yeah, if we went with the whole enchilada.
offering.
Thing about it is that I'd be interested because of talking to other municipalities on different subjects like lawn maintenance and things like that. What they have on the books and what they actually enforce is two different things I found out. So, we'd want to talk to, somebody in Geneva and places like that to find out if they actually do what's on the books.
Well, if you look at the statute, it's basically enforcing, making sure people are registered. So, and the things before that is to make sure that, your septic system is appropriate for the number of bedrooms, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Who other than host compliance has got the software that can track to find these rentals? That's the dilemma that I'm sure that Chris Jensen doesn't want to take over as far as identifying the rental units.
I think he was saying he just did it himself. So, any one of us, I would ask Chris, but to see if he did a Google on it. And that's why I was bringing up Premier Properties. There are also properties on Premier Properties. So we could try, the minimum at first, just for keeping track of the properties, and then go from there. I don't want to expend a lot of money at this point, obviously, because of our revenue situation, but I do think this is something that should moved on. So
The one concern or thought I have is that You know, Doug talked about some of the more difficult properties that are being rented, the ones that he's having the most challenges with. And my question would be, would those people or those properties be the ones that sign up for this? Or are they going to be the ones that avoid it to begin with? And then we
If they
don't get
don't, I'm sorry.
contact information from the people.
If they don't sign up for it, there's a, like on the Town of Geneva one, there's a procedure for violating it, so.
Okay. So if we know that they're a rental and they're not registering, then there's a process established, Kathy, that we could go and contact them, and then a process where we escalate the issue further.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, just a quick look at their statute, which if you check the chat, I sent you the link for it.
Okay.
Yeah, make the cost of a violation more expensive than registration.
But it would also give us the ability to say that we, you know, here's what we have done to try and ensure that these properties are safe. The town would be able to demonstrate that by virtue of, you know, a code that we would develop, similar perhaps to what, you know, Geneva has, or. Sounds like there's a bit more research that needs to be done and review of the, perhaps that code from Geneva, and then try to come to some conclusion at some future meeting. Is that where we are? Or?
Right, I'd say that we're at that, Terry. I'd like to check out some other places besides just Geneva, maybe even Skinny Atlas, you know, which may be more comparable to us here.
In their listing, they had the town of Aurora. Isn't the town of Aurora on Cayuga Lake? That might be another one to check.
On the east side, yeah.
Yeah, east side, right. Okay, then what's the committee want us to do then? Terry's suggestion to do some more research on it before and bring it up at another meeting?
I think this got to be an open issue for sure. And I would like to go back a little history. Gary and Terry will remember, 10, 12 years ago, there was a movement in the town board to outlaw all short-term rentals on the west side. Right, Gary?
Yeah, I seem to remember that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so for more recent participants in this process, this is not a new issue.
No.
No.
Would it be
Yeah.
helpful to have a draft at all of a registration ordinance similar to what Geneva has done, so we have something to chew on rather than just pulling things out of the air, and then we can add and subtract from that foundation?
Hey, Chuck, earlier on in this process, I did kind of modify Geneva's code to, I guess, be more in line with what maybe the ordinance would want, and to update it for the town of Canandaigua. I can send that out to everybody.
Please do.
Yeah, thank you.
So we'll just pursue it and certainly bring it up at another meeting or other meetings in the future. Is that fine with everybody on the
Yeah,
committee?
keep it on the agenda.
Okay. Eric, do you want to move into your parking information now?
Sure. Well, I sent out the revised draft. I'll pull it up real quick.
You want to go over your changes, Eric, when you bring it up? That's mostly SOP. Oop, what'd you do there? Parking space off street.
while you're on that page, again, I throw out consolidating the definition of motor vehicle and vehicle. They seem to be one and the same, but not really.
Did we lose Eric?
I don't know. We're locked on page 3.
He sent a text. He lost his audio. He's been muted.
And he was in
We
control of that.
we talked about that. How did we leave that? I know we went back and forth about boats and RVs, and
Yeah.
I think we did agree it was one and the same.
I don't think this definition of motor vehicle here is the same as we have in some other codes that we just worked on within the last couple of years. To wait till Larry comes back on to ask him that, because it seems so that we identified the motor vehicle as, registered.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's what we sort of honed in on.
I mean, and when we have things like,
We lost you too, Gary.
It's a virus.
Media is evolving.
Hey,
Gremlins.
the phone, and I got kicked off the audio. If you guys want to indulge me, where did I leave off here? What did I miss while you guys?
You were putting up the definitions, and we were kicking around vehicle versus motor vehicle.
Okay.
and when you were on, Eric, I made the comment on motor vehicles. That's not the same definitions that we worked on earlier for, the definition of it in another code. Wasn't that where we indicated that it was registered vehicle? So then it covered everything that was could go on the road or trail.
Let me check that folder one.
And then you get into what the DMV's definition of a motor vehicle is.
Just based on this local law from back in 2018, doesn't look like we changed the definition of motor vehicle at that time.
I thought I saw it. I think you want to buy it.
The registered vehicle unit built on self-propelled.
Yeah, Control F, you could find it.
I don't know if it'll search this.
Too damn many vehicles.
Anyways, I don't think it was in this one in 2018. To answer your question, Gary. Did you guys come to a conclusion?
There you go, motor vehicle. Oh, okay. That was what I saw, I think so.
As far as which one, vehicle or motor vehicle, you wanted to use?
I think the question was whether it was automobile or motor vehicle, right? Is that what we were?
think it was previously noted as automobile, but I don't think we have a definition of automobile in the town code, which is why I changed it to motor vehicle. So, no, we don't have a definition of automobile, so that's why it was changed to motor vehicle.
Okay.
What does the state say? I mean, DMV or,
Yes,
Yeah,
DMV has a definition of motor vehicle. So if our definition of motor vehicle is different from theirs, a good question.
Why?
For purposes of, well, for purposes of interpretation of laws, the state, the higher government definition, the least restrictive definition applies. So when you create your own definition, you create issues.
Even though they're enforcing separate rules.
Yes. Unless you call it something else. But yeah, I know it's you know, looking into it a little too much maybe, but always looking at it from the law perspective. I'm going to come in and fight a ticket or something and saying that your definition of motor vehicle is not the same as a state definition. I'd have to look into whether DMV law says this just applies to this section, but generally, anytime there's a definition or a law that's in conflict with higher authority, that higher authority would take precedence. I don't know the significance of it, but
I have to imagine it's relatively minor in this instance.
probably.
Are we willing to move on for the time being?
Yeah, just make a note.
Yes.
Maybe we could somehow,
We're getting in the weeds here, guys.
yeah,
That's what lawyers do. Sorry.
That's all right. No.
What I get paid to do.
Somebody's got to chop the weeds.
no, that comes under lawn maintenance truck.
That's lawn maintenance? Okay.
that's another code.
That's another one.
As long as we don't use weed killer.
I have here a note that you had a question, Kathy, regarding the changes to appropriate landscaping and screening.
Yeah, I just had a question why that was omitted. Was it seen as not being necessary or redundant? Or?
There's a separate section that covers that, which I noted here, 220-76, which is the landscaping section of town code.
Okay.
And
Mike, I had a
then,
question about pavement striping in general, like why we're talking about, I guess if you could explain to me why it's discouraged. I mean, it's unsightly, obviously, for, you know, for a homeowner to have pavement striping, but
yeah, I'm not sure why that was in there originally.
Unwanted parking to be discussed.
I think the change was kind of just rewording it, right? In locations where occurrence.
Locations where difference of unwanted parking is this.
Planning board.
Pavement striping is discouraged. What is unwanted parking?
I guess
I'm
it's like
guessing-
parking up on, you know, the grass or, you know, parking in somebody's sidewalk, that
Okay.
kind of thing. I guess why do we need to say it's discouraged? I mean, in some cases, I would think it would be. The sentence is a run-on sentence, but it sounds like pavement striping is discouraged. When the sentence is pavement striping is discouraged within site development, parking areas in favor of. So, I don't know. Again, maybe it's looking into it too much, but.
Yeah, it's not really clear where pavement striping is discouraged. It almost reads like it's always discouraged, which I don't
Right.
think is.
Maybe just sentence structure again, in site development, parking areas, pavement striping is, that kind of thing.
Seems like an acceptable change. Does the committee feel the same way?
Yeah, let's-
Chuck on the planning board, Chuck on the planning board, do you regulate the parking and stuff like that? Because I was on zoning. I remember we used to have, the length and the width of striping and stuff like that come before us now and then.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know if you
that's one of my questions, but I think Eric's answer will be it's covered somewhere else. It's to the metrics, the sizes of the parking spaces, and if you're going to size them, you've got to delineate them. So I think delineating of wanted parking spaces or needed parking spaces or required parking spaces is good. But as far as delineating unwanted parking spaces, I sort of agree with this paragraph. So again, Eric, maybe you can answer my question while it's been brought up. The dimensions of the parking spaces that does show in another section of the regulations, right?
Yeah, I think that's 74, which is the general parking ones.
Because I think we agreed last time to make sure we leave that part, those numbers in the regulations, even though we're not going to get into the calculations of how many spaces are required.
I think that statement can just, I'm thinking at it again, in locations where parking is unwanted, instead of pavement striping, use something else or something like that. Just simple.
Yeah, unwanted or overflow parking.
Yeah, just like, again, flip the sentence so dumb people like me can make it easier.
Okay. We're okay with that one. It's fine. Nothing new.
I have a couple comments relative to the accessibility parking.
Yeah. Do you mind if we just work our way down there? We'll be there in just a second.
Not at all.
So, Kathy had a question or comment that the authority subsection should come prior to the purpose statement. Just looking at some of the other sections of the code, it seems like the purpose generally comes before the authority part.
Let me check my notes to see what I meant there, because that doesn't make sense.
Sorry if I misinterpreted.
I'll figure it out while you're moving along, or not.
So Chuck, to your point just a second ago, this proposed code does eliminate that dimensional standard of 10 by 20.
Okay, but do we pick it up somewhere else? Well, it gets rid of the 10 by 20. I think we agreed that smaller spaces are now the standard, 9 by 18, something like that. But I think we should have some sort of dimension for these spaces so that it's not up to the discretion of the applicant.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, we're willing to talk about number of spaces, but as far as the spaces that are to be provided, yes, I think we should have a hard line.
Didn't you do it in the design standards?
I was thinking that this morning. I don't think we got into private, commercial private parking lots as far as designs. Most of the design standards are related to public facilities, public entities, public infrastructure.
So if we were to add, this is the one that I pulled up before from Buffalo about the essentially dimensional standards that would.
Yep.
Site design criteria. It has different dimensions based on which type people are going for.
Yep.
which are all, seems like under 9 by 18.
So how can we incorporate something similar to this if it's not already in our regulations?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's not, we can incorporate this in there, but we should be sure that what we're calling out as far as the width, depth are the same, or at least not noted in the, excuse me, the code portion. It's also going to be noted in the site design portion.
Could be the same area where you get into the landscaping, like we were talking about previously, the islands and number of trees per parking space, those kind of metrics.
And Eric, just to cover what, put that to sleep, my comment on the authority where that should be placed, I'll withdraw that comment because, again, I been misreading it, so.
So for this one real quick, are we okay with doing that if we also include the dimensions within site design criteria?
Or at least reference it, yes.
Gary, Terry, you guys commented on it a minute ago. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, so you're talking about
I am.
9 by 18?
So this part that's highlighted right here would be deleted, but this kind of graphic parking stall drive aisle dimensions would be included in the site design criteria, showing that the different depth and widths based on the design and angle of the parking.
Maybe what to do is just put a reference to what the standards would be, the detail sheet, because I think if you in the verbiage you had 9 by 18, but you didn't say that was for a 90-degree parking. So rather than getting into all the specifics of which angle the parking and which way the aisles are going, just make a reference to the wherever we decide to put that that detail sheet. There you go.
And preserve the caveat that it's up to the planning board for final approval.
Right.
Well, this right
I agree
here,
with that.
requirements shall be determined by the planning board. So it's in the authority section.
Yeah.
Right, so okay with that?
Yep. Onward.
I'm good.
John, do you want to give us your comments on the ADA section?
Well, yes. One is that we don't require a handicap parking spot unless there's 20 or more spaces. And then we only require a spot for an additional 20 spaces. So in other words, 1 for 20, 2 for 40, 3 for 60, etc. And I think that's woefully inadequate. And then we have another comment later on in section, or excuse me, on page 12, where we talk about conforming to federal standards for ADA compliance, which could be in discrepancy with whatever our local mandate is.
There's also state requirements. So, or you could say at a minimum or something like that.
Or we
The
dictate
state,
it
Kathy,
ourselves.
isn't it?
Or we dictate it ourselves under section 2020.73B.4 as we have done here. But either way, it's still woefully inadequate.
Well, as the population ages and becomes more dependent on places like that, it's a good point. It's
So I just quickly added the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act up here, though maybe more appropriately it could be like the federal codes. So that it would read that, that will be required in the purpose. In the instance where there is a conflict, the stricter regulations govern. So if ADA standards conflict with local rules, they happen to be stricter, those ones would govern.
You know what the ADA Act, what does it say with respect to John's question of 1 per 20?
That was my question.
It's like 5%, it's a,
John, do you know the federal
I do not.
requirement? Okay.
Look into it.
And to see if there's a state.
yeah.
But I can tell you as an example, the parking lot at Kershaw Park, right next to the swimming beach, they have, I think, 6 handicap spots, and there's probably a total of 50 or less parking spaces in that parking lot, and it's full all the time.
And there's
Agreed.
definitely state guidelines. I looked it up, and there's litigation surrounding, not having the required spots as required by state and federal statutes. And parking in Kershaw is always packed for everyone. So yes, that's definitely an issue for people with disabilities. So, but of course we have no control over that.
Well, we could make our standards greater than and set the bar, but that's.
Oh no, I just mean Kershaw. We can't change
Yep.
Kershaw.
Yep.
So with regard to this, I'll look into what the ADA says if they have a specific number requirement. And John, do you have a suggestion, or should we just, I guess we can certainly look into what other codes are doing, but I'm not sure if you or the committee has like sort of an example in mind.
I do not.
So it does say a minimum of 5%, so there is flexibility there.
Imagine theoretically the planning board could require more.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to leave it up to discretion to require. I don't know how we would judge whether more spaces are needed or not.
Yeah,
I mean, it could depend on the use, but who's to say?
And a place like Kershaw, unfortunately, has woefully inadequate parking for anybody.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think some discretion has to be given, depending on the property, what the property is being used for, more, not less obviously, but for more spaces with input from people that know more than me about this. So that's.
Okay. We'll come back to that.
They certainly should review what other standards say, so. I mean, maybe that 5% should be 10%.
Well, again, it would depend somewhat on the demographics of
Yeah.
who would be using it. As you said, if you've got a doctor's office, maybe you ought to have half of them.
Eric, if you could just double check with Chris Jensen. I know he's very knowledgeable on that because it's actually a state law that's actually on their test. And I know that depending on the use of the facility, there are minimum, for instance, like I think Chris was telling me like a shopping mall, if it has at least 5 stores, has to have a minimum of 10 handicap places or something or other. So just, it's something that Chris and Dale will deal with all the time if we just double check with them.
Okay. Another suggestion from Kathy. I think it was another wording change. Let's see. Planning board may require a different distance to the intersection of any two streets as a condition of approval where a traffic study identifies that said distance would improve safety and efficiency. So that would replace what's below here, which originally read, where a traffic study identifies a different distance to the intersection of any two streets would provide improved highway safety and efficiency. The planning board may then require said cited distance as a condition of subdivision or site plan approval.
Just turn those sentences around.
I don't see why that would be an issue.
No.
No.
There's a question here about code requirements for handicap parking and off-site parking facilities. Handicap parking would have to be provided on-site. So they wouldn't be allowed to have off-site parking for handicap. Okay, yeah. And then I added this section to try to codify land.
I'm sorry, say that again, Eric.
At the last meeting, somebody, it might have been you, Chuck, asked if I could add in a section on land banking.
Yep.
Yep. So I attempted that here. I don't know if anybody has any comments on the language that I used, whether it's appropriate.
I'm fine with it. I think we agreed that the board should have discretion as to allowing for land banking as well as location and number of spaces.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with that.
It's worked out well. You agree, Tom, that
Yeah.
land banking has, we haven't gotten caught with a shortage of spaces.
Lord knows we got in excess of parking spaces everywhere.
We should go back to some of the existing ones and make them land
Oh
bank.
my God, absolutely.
We'll get them when they come in.
I think that's it. I think maybe the only other change here is that I added the language about a waiver from the planning board about parking. I just added this language from the other waiver sections in town code.
Finish it out on porch. Here. Really?
So that's it. What else do you guys have on this one?
I'm pretty comfortable with it.
I'm good.
With
What about the rest of the committee members? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
So I heard Tom, Chuck, Kathy.
Yep.
Jeff, you
I'm
wanna
good.
speak?
Yep.
I'm fine with it.
I'm okay.
Process moving forward. Obviously, John, you have the question and comment that I'll work to address with regard to the number of spaces. Does the committee want to send this draft to the various boards, entities for comments?
I think it's ready.
Yeah, do it.
Bob, what's your thoughts?
I'm on board.
Run it up the flagpole, guys, gals.
You can say guys. I don't care.
Well, with that, then this one's kind of all set. We'll get comments back and bring it back to you in a month or two.
Sounds good.
The normal glacial speed of government.
Well, as you've noticed, we haven't, sent any through that we've approved in the past and gone through all the committees. until we can get face to face, and hopefully we can do that very soon. So that's why we haven't had any public hearings on 3
Yeah.
or 4 that we got on the back burner. That's all been approved so far.
There could be some lengthy town board meetings coming up.
Well, I wasn't planning on putting them all in at once.
Well, thank you.
Is there anything else anybody wants to address today? Because it's, past our meeting time. Looks like it's 10:15. Hopefully we can meet face to face and our next meeting of August 3rd. But we'll let you know well in advance.
What's on the agenda?
What was next up on the list there, Eric? I don't have it in front of me. Certainly we'll talk about the short-term rentals because we should have information back by then that we would need to help us out.
Okay.
There's one that actually came up recently that I would like to address soon if we could. It's regarding the stream setback. It probably will be a relatively minor change, or as far as complexity. So our code reads that no structure shall be built within 100 feet of the bed of a stream carrying water on average 6 months of the year. This clause of a bed of a stream carrying money with six months a year. What does that mean?
Who measures it?
We don't keep that information to my knowledge. But if that's how we're supposed to be determining which streams we're supposed to buffer 100 feet, we kind of have to have it. My thought is that the intent of how it's currently written or how we've been enforcing it has been to just be 100 feet of the bed of a stream, as noted by like the DEC. Essentially, that's where we get our streams from. So if we could change that to just say 100 feet of the bed of a stream, and then the definition of, add a definition for stream, I guess, because we only have one for water course, which includes streams.
Is this where we get into the concept blue line streams? Is that
Kind of.
Would it be stream as identified by whatever, or who determines whether it's a stream?
Well, when you make the determination, you certainly wouldn't want it to be determined at this weather that we're having.
not based on flow?
Based on the determination.
Who determines whether, sorry, shutting up.
It would probably be determined by either the DEC or, as shown in the Town of Canandaigua Open Space and Conservation Master Plan, whatever the title actually is.
So wherever you have that, it should say that.
Right, it'll be in the definition.
Right, okay.
So,
And you were going to get, Eric, were you going to get all the DEC to have them send you information in regards to what is considered streams in the town?
Yeah, I already did. I haven't heard back from them. I also reached out to Kevin O'Vaney. He would like to have a conversation about it too. I guess that's something that he's wanted to change, he says, for years. Okay.
Do you think that airport disclosure statement should be moved up in priority, or given what's happening out on Brickyard?
Up to you guys. If anybody's not familiar with what it refers to, as building, especially in the uptown area, occurs nearby the airport. I believe it was kind of Ryan Stachak and Bob LaCourse that have been talking about that, or kind of brought it up. That's similar to the ag disclosure laws, that you'll be nearby ag use and there's associated noise, dust, etc. Something similar for the airport to say that, you know, you'll be living near the airport where there's associated noise, etc. Did I explain that properly, Chuck?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it. It's certainly a consideration.
So,
Well, do you want to put that on the agenda for the August meeting too, Eric?
sure.
I saw this morning the Environmental Conservation Committee's recommendation on a couple of properties that they were looking at. And the use of permeable pavers came up again in their review. And they even made a recommendation that a potential construction use permeable pavers as a way to minimize impact. And I just throw it out there and just wonder, is that something we should be looking at, whether we want to recognize permeable pavers as not hard surface and use that as a way to encourage people that are developing properties to mitigate some of the water issues that we have?
And John, not only recognize, but also define what they are.
Sure. But I think not recognizing it does not provide motivation for people to start using them. You know, the other thing that came up and we talked about recently at the zoning board level was a person wanted to use a geo driveway, which is a grass driveway with plastic geo
Grid. Mm-hmm.
in lieu of a hard surface. And I just think either or both of those should be recognized as permeable surfaces to encourage and motivate people to start using them, particularly the permeable pavers.
This is a big, John's absolutely right. This is a big issue when people are trying to reduce their lot coverage, and certainly a typical driveway is a minus for these people. So I think this is a big, might even be some kind of a percentage where a permeable paver would not be the same thing as grass, but it would be something in between. But I think there's plenty of room for discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. We have a discussion recently, one of the few previous meetings here about permeable surfaces. I can't remember what it was now, but we were talking about, wasn't it also from the Buffalo's green design standards that they were talking about grass parking areas?
Yeah, they had grass parking lots that were allowable.
And most of
Wonder
you
at this time of the year, when you look at your own lawn, it's turn into straw. You know how those that newfangled driveway would work, John. I'm curious.
well, would end up being brown, just like our lawns are right now.
I guess you're right. Yeah.
But I think, you know, right now, the town does not recognize permeable pavers as being a permeable surface. So therefore it's included as part of the lot coverage and building coverage calculation, called the lot coverage calculations.
Right.
And I think if we recognized it as being a permeable surface and not included as part of the lot coverage, we might be encouraging more people to put in paver driveways as opposed to asphalt or concrete.
Not to have too much of this conversation today, but the issue of long-term maintenance comes into this, where especially if you have a permeable driveway and it becomes sealed over, at least if it goes to the planning and zoning board, they can require some sort of agreement theoretically to maintain it as such over the long run. Whereas if it skips that process and is just permeable, then at the later date when they fill it in or pave over and repave it, whatever, then it becomes useless. So we want to make sure that we still have that long-term capacity.
Remember when we had Homerama at the Lakewood Meadows, the first houses that were built on that, I can't remember the name of all those houses were Homerama houses. One of the houses that was built there had a permeable driveway. It was a plastic material. I mean, standing on it, it was much softer than walking on an asphalt driveway or concrete, certainly. But I've driven in there and looked. It itself is held up. Now, whether somebody would pave over it in the future, that's a good point, Eric. But we should. John's got a good point. I think we should really consider that. Maybe it's not taking 100% off the permeable or the impermeable surface, but certainly a significant percentage of it shouldn't count against the homeowner. So.
Will it be all right with the committee if I meet with Eric and for the agenda for August 3rd, since we have so many, pick out the ones that we think are more critical and have them on the agenda for August 3rd?
Sounds
Sure.
good.
Yep.
Is there anything else anybody wants? Pardon?
Just a quick comment regarding that, Gary.
Yes.
How do we define critical?
Beats me. That's Gary's job.
I think it's Gary and Eric,
I guess-
critical.
I guess what I was referring to is that the ones that the development office and the residents consider them more important, but I don't know how we determine that either.
Number of phone calls coming in, or
Right.
We'll leave it up to you guys.
Just to give you food for thought, and I think you and Gary and I might have had conversation about this already, but I think any ordinance that is going to attract and stimulate economic development here in the community, and we ought to be considering more important than maybe others. FYI, that's all, just food for consideration.
Okay, well, thanks, John. Is there anything else any other person would like to make a comment on before we close the meeting?
not for me.
Good.
You all set, Bob? John?
All set.
Kathy, you're still there? I don't know if you're still there or not.
I'm here, just being quiet. Don't complain.
Okay. And Chuck?
I'm good.
Okay. Well,
Thanks.
thanks for attending and thanks for your input. And, we'll see you on August 3rd and hopefully it's face to face at that time.
Thank
Sounds
you.
Thanks a
good.
lot, everyone.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Okay.
Gary.
Thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
Take care.